Okay, right, slightly different video. It's regarding this remote control car, and it's based on the Range Rover, and it's a 1 in 24 scale. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and show you and explain the equivalent speed, the scaled down speed. Obviously the remote control car this one won't go as quick as the real life sized Range Rover. This is a 1 in 24 scale. So I've worked out that the real life sized Range Rover, which is 24 times bigger than this car, well, if it's travelling at 30 miles an hour, it's going to travel its own length so many times in a second. 30 miles an hour is, I've worked it all out, 1600 metres is a mile, so you times 1600 metres by 30, that comes to a large number. I'll show all that on the other calculator, but I've basically scaled the speed down to the equivalent. This would travel at 1.25 miles an hour, would be the equivalent of the real life size car travelling at 30, because when it travels at 1.25 miles an hour, it's travelling at the length of itself so many times more in 1 second, whereas the real life car will travel its length so many times more in the same second, in the same amount of time. Obviously it's going to be 24 times faster. 24 times faster. Really, you just divide it by 24. So 30 miles an hour, if you divide that by 24, it comes in at 1.25 miles per hour, which is 1.25 miles an hour. So this has to travel 1.25 miles an hour to do the equivalent of the equivalent sensation of 30 miles an hour. So if you were 24 times smaller and this whizzed past you at 1.25 miles an hour, that would be the equivalent of the real life sized Range Rover travelling past you at 30 miles an hour. So if this was travelling at 2.5 miles an hour, that would be the equivalent of the real life sized Range Rover travelling past you at 60 miles an hour. You'd have to be 24 times smaller, and this would be like the real life size car. But that you'd be a giant, obviously, if this was a real life size car. So I'm going to show you just what it looks like. I'm going to actually get the maximum speed of this car by timing how long it takes to travel a set distance when it's flat out. The real life size Range Rover, I'm guessing it'll probably travel well over 100 miles per hour. In order for this to do that, you'd have to divide that by, so let's just say the real life one travels at, I don't know, 120 miles an hour. So you divide that by 24, so whatever that comes to, this car would have to do that as well. So 120 miles an hour divided by 24, so it's about 5 miles an hour. I'd have to travel, well, 30 into 120 is 4 times, so 4 times 1.25, it's 5 miles an hour. This would have to travel at 5 miles per hour in order to be the equivalent sensors travelling 120 miles an hour for the real life size car. Now I could find out if this travels at 5 miles an hour just by measuring the distance it takes. I've got a set measuring tape and I'll time it. What I'll do is I'll record the video and I'll say stop, I'll say start first of all, and then when it reaches the end I'll hit the bit of the wood and I'll show stop. So when the playback, you would just time it with your stopwatch, and that will give you the speed, time, distance over time. The actual car, as I said, it's 1 in 24 scale, it's written on it. So it's basically in every dimension of this car, it's 24 times smaller than the real life car. Now I've got my measuring tape here, 30 miles an hour in real life. It's travelling something like 13.333 metres per second. If we times that by 3.1, comes in at something like 41 feet per second. I'll show you on the calculator later on. I'm just going to explain this bit first. So if you're going by feet per second, 30 miles an hour, it's going to be roughly 30 miles an hour, yeah, it's 41.3 feet per second, and it's 13.33 metres per second, because there's 3.1 feet in a metre. So that's metres per second, you times it by 3.1, comes in at 41.3 feet. Divide that by 24 for the scale down size. It's 1.72 feet. This car's got to travel 1.72 feet in a second in order to have the equivalent speed of 30 mile an hour. So 1.72 feet, there's 12 inches in a foot, so it's times that by 12. I'll go through this calculation again later. 20.6 inches. So it's got to travel 20.6 inches, and I'll do that no bother actually, but it could certainly reach that. But to get the top speed, I'd have to find out just how many inches it will travel in 1 second, and then scale it up by 24 to get the equivalent scale speed of, the upscale speed. So if this was a real life size car, scaled down 24, and to get the, in other words, that's electric, it's a battery operated remote control. So if this was scaled up to the real life size, it wouldn't reach, or will it reach, the actual real life model car, a real life size car, if you get what I mean. I'm going to find all that out shortly. 20.6 inches. Now I could do this over a 2-second experiment, because then there's less room for, it'll fluctuate any errors. It's not an accurate experiment, it's just a rough guide. But if it's done over a longer distance, it tends to iron out the imperfections and you can get more of an average. I'll probably do the experiment once or twice. So this is how much it's got to travel in 1 second, which I'll do no bother. In the 0 to 60 will probably be quicker anyway, because it's lighter. But here it is. I mean, this is just, so it's travelled that. I mean, I'll get this on the flat out speed, but you can see why I'd want to do it. I don't know about the batteries, but you could see how I'd want to do it over a longer distance, because it irons out any imperfections, gives you more of an average. And the helicopter had to fly over during the experiment, didn't it? So I'm going to show you a wee bit of the calculations using the calculator, and I'll explain it through on there. Right, so using the calculator, it's difficult to film and do this at the same time, it's a bit annoying, but never mind. 30 miles an hour. Right, so there's 1600 metres in a mile, so times in 30 by 1600 metres, that's 48,000 metres that will travel. So if you're travelling at 30 miles an hour, you're going to travel 48 kilometres in 1 hour, which is 48,000 metres in 1 hour. So if you times that by 3.1, because there's 3.1 feet in a metre, right? That's how many feet you're going to travel in 1 hour, travelling at 30 miles an hour. Right? So if you divide, actually no, if you times that by 12, right, because there's 12 inches in a foot, okay, that's how many inches you're going to travel in 1 hour, travelling at a speed of 30 miles per hour. So, to find out how many inches you're going to travel in a second, travelling at 30 miles an hour, you divide that by 3,600, because there are 3,600 seconds in an hour. Comes in at 496 inches. So if you're travelling at 30 miles an hour, you're going to travel 496 inches in 1 second. So this is a scaled down sized car of 1 in 24. So it's 24 times smaller than the real life size car. The real life size car at 1 in 1 scale, 1 to 1 scale, real size or full size scaled car will travel 496 inches in 1 second. So if I divide that by 24, right, because the car's 24 times smaller, if I divide that by 24, that's 20.6 inches. So this remote control car, if it could travel 20.6 inches in 1 second, then that will have the equivalent speed of 30 miles per hour for its scaled size. So travelling at 20.6 inches in 1 second, that's roughly going to equate to 24 times slower than 30 miles an hour, which is basically 1.25 miles an hour. So travelling at 1.25 miles an hour, which is what this is going to, which is capable of doing more actually, right? Travelling at 1.25 miles an hour, you're going to travel 20.6 inches in 1 second. which is the equivalent speed of 30 miles an hour, because you're dividing 30 miles an hour by 24. So if I times that by 24, at 30 miles an hour, you'll travel at 496 inches. With the measuring tape set at around about 20.6 inches, which is just over 20.5 inches, the car, the remote control car, has got to travel that distance in 1 second. So it will also travel twice that distance in 2 seconds, and it will travel 3 times that distance in 3 seconds. If I do it over a longer distance, any imperfections in the experiment will average out and iron out to give you a rougher idea. Rather than doing it on a short experiment like this, I'll probably do it over 61.8 inches. I'll do it 3 times. So if it travels that in 3 seconds, then it'll still be the equivalent of doing 30 miles an hour, just travelling it over a longer distance. So there's just under 61.8 inches, basically, just under 62 inches. So if the remote control car, which it will do actually, because I know it's going to go faster, it's got to travel that distance in 3 seconds, and when it's going to be, if the remote control car's travelling at 1.25 miles an hour, which is 1.25 miles an hour, which is 24 times slower than 30 miles an hour, it will travel that distance, the 62 inches, just under, I'll travel that distance in 3 seconds. So I'm going to be able to do that experiment now. It'll travel faster, but I can figure out what the fastest it'll go. But I'm going to do this and just see how it goes with that. So and doing this on my own, it's a little bit difficult, but I could try. Once it passes the start, I'll say start. Once it hits the end, I'll say stop. And then I'll just play back the video and I'll time how long it takes. So here goes. There's the remote there. Right. So when I say go, you just switch your stopwatch on, and when I say stop, when it reaches there, the front of the car passes that line, I'll say go, and when the front of the car passes there, I'll say stop, and you just play that back in the video and time it with your stopwatch. Right, so here goes, let's have a look. Let's give it a shot. Go, stop. I'll repeat the experiment once or twice. So I've set the car back a wee bit, just so the speed's built up, so it's already at the speed. The acceleration, I don't know, I've not done that yet. I could do it not the 60 equivalent later, but this time I'm going to look at the actual tape, not through the camera lens, because it wasn't quite so accurate. So here goes. Let's go. Stop. I'll do it again. I'll repeat that experiment again. Right. Start. Stop. So now what I do is I just play back the video. I'll use the stopwatch. I'll do it over 3 times and I'll come up with an average. So I'm just basically going to time with my stopwatch when I hear myself saying start, and when I hear myself saying stop, I'll just stop the stopwatch. I'll do it over 3 and get an average. So I'll just use my stopwatch and I'll just hear myself play back on it and I'll get the times. So after the first shot, the experiment, obviously it depends on how we hear it on the video. It's very, very roughly, because you'll never get it accurate. It comes in at 1.37 seconds to travel 61.8 inches. So that was just on the first attempt, and also when you're watching it on a video, you'll lose efficiency as well because of the delay in the stopwatch and you actually hearing it, etc. It's very, very rough, very rudimentary, rough estimate. But that was the first one, 1.37 seconds. So on the second one, it was 1.31 seconds. And it was 1.50 seconds, 1.5 seconds on the third attempt. Very, very approximate. In order to get an average speed, I've added up all the times, 1.37 seconds, 1.31 seconds and 1.5 seconds. Add them up to get that, which is 4.18. Divide that by 3. That gives an average of 1.39 seconds. So we'll just say 1.4 seconds approximately to travel 62, just under 62 inches. So from that data, I could work out how fast it's going in miles per hour, because I know now how long it took that remote control car to travel the 62 inches. that'll give you, I could work out from that the actual miles per hour that it's travelling. Then all I would need to, that was it flat out by the way, and then all I need to do is scale it up by 24. So whatever miles per hour it's actually doing, that times it by 24, that will give you what it would be if it was scaled up to the real life size car in the current situation. Now I know that there's a load of other factors, there's wind resistance, there's obviously that would be like a mountain range when it's going over flagstones, you know, but a real life car is completely different. Obviously there's many factors involved. There's not I'm just doing it anyway just for the dimensional size and just a very rough guide to give you the equivalent sensation. The method I used it, by the way, for the timing it when I was timing it off the videos, it's the same method that I did it for the real life, not the 60 tests. When I'm just driving it on my own, as it should, because if there's other people in it, it just weighs it down. I mean, not heavy enough. But yeah, so I just play it back in the video when I say go, and when I say 60, I just time it from the playback on the video, and I do it 2 or 3 times, get an average, because there's inaccuracies in them all. Obviously, there's more data and inefficiencies when I play it back in the video as well, because of the processing time and the time it takes to hear. It's just very rough guide. So I'm going to work out the actual miles per hour that remote control car was doing, and I'll show you how I do it, the calculations using the calculator on the other phone. So what I've managed to get here, it's coming at an average of 1.39 seconds. So the remote control car will travel just under 61.8 inches in roughly 1.39 seconds. So from this I could figure out the miles per hour that it's doing, and I'll try and explain that using this calculator. I'll try again, I dropped the blood moon thing. Right, so 61.8 inches, so that's it travelled at in just 1.39. So if I divide 61.8 inches, that's the distance that it travelled in, I divide that by 1.39 seconds, which was the average, right, it comes in at 44.4 inches per second. So it's travelling at 44 inches per second. So to find out how many inches it will travel in an hour, I times that by 3,600, because there's 3,600 seconds in an hour. So it's going to travel 160,057 inches in an hour. So to get it in feet, I would divide that by 12, because there's 12 inches in a feet, and 1 foot. So that's how many feet the remote control car will travel in an hour. Now there's 3.1 feet in a metre, so if I divide that by 3.1, that's how many metres that the car is going to travel in 1 hour. So there's 1,600 metres in a mile. So if I divide it by 1,600, comes in at 2.6 miles per hour. So the top speed of that remote control car is 2.6 miles per hour approximately. You can see there 2.6893, blah blah blah, and so on, but roughly 2.6 miles an hour, right? So if I times that by 24, if I scale it up to the real life size car, right, the top speed of that would only be 64.5 miles an hour. So I will never get the scaled equivalent speed of the real life car. That's only going to do the equivalent of 65 miles an hour. So there you go, there's the actual ratio. The 0 to 60, well, I do that, I'll have to figure that out, but that's the top speed, the equivalent. That's the equivalent top speed, 65 miles an hour. So that's it flat out. It's not going any faster. So when I done the experiment, I was going flat out. So based on that experiment, it only does a scale speed maximum of 65 miles an hour. So for the top speed, the 0 to 60, I'm just going to basically time how long it takes to get it from rest up to its top speed. And now when I say start, that will go. You reset your stopwatch, and when I say stop, that will be reaching the equivalent of 65 miles an hour, and you just time all it takes you to go progressing to this top speed, and that'll be the not to 60 miles an hour. So bear in mind the batteries might be going on a bit on it as well, but so when from the start, I'll reach flat out well within that measuring tape length. So I'll do it 3 times. Start, top speed. I'll do that again. Go, stop, quite a big runny. Go, stop, longer just to prove that it's going flat out. Go, oh, that didn't work. If I go forward might be a good idea, eh? Right, false start. Start, stop. You visually see it not getting any faster, so you can see it as it reached the top speed, it didn't go any quicker. Right, I was in the way, they're working on that. They're doing a bit of DIY stuff. It was getting dark in there, so I'll come out here. No, where was it? Yeah. The battery level will obviously have an effect on the not the equivalent to 60. So it's, as I say, it's basically timing how long it takes that remote control car from a start to its maximum speed. Now you saw it was doing its maximum, it wasn't going any quicker. So I could see when it's reached its maximum and I just went stop. So I'm going to actually play the video back. I'll get the averages, and I'll get an average not to 65 actually, because it flats out at the equivalent of 65 mile an hour. Because remember, it was doing 2.6 times that by 24 to get the maximum speed. This is the scale up speed, remember, and using the scale up speed. So when it's reaching its maximum speed about 65 miles per hour, that's the scale equivalent speed. So from naught to its scale equivalent speed. So even when I went stop, and it's still maybe just a wee bit more, it would have been the equivalent of the 0 to 60 test. First naught to its maximum is 2 seconds. So it's slightly under 2 seconds. That was on the first one. So the second one was 2.33 seconds, naught to its maximum speed. So that should be just slightly under, because the maximum, if it's 0 to 60, it would be just slightly under its top speed. Because its top speed is 65 mile an hour, equivalent, remember. On the third 0 to 60, or 0 to top speed, 2.24 seconds. Right, so 2 seconds, 2.33, 2.24 seconds, that's the total. Divide it by 3 and it comes to an average of 2.1 seconds. So it'll travel 0 to 60 and just under that, because this remote control car is going from 0 to 65 equivalent. I just done it as top speed. The reason the 0 to 60 on that is very fast is because the physics and the dynamics are in real life, and that's just a toy model. So it's not got the weight equivalence to shift. So in other words, the power to weight, or I should say the torque to weight ratio is different, it's higher on that. The power, if it was a more powerful remote control car, it would go faster. Power is torque times speed, but the torque to weight ratio is higher on the remote control car compared to the real life one, because it could accelerate much quicker. The real life Range Rover wouldn't have imagined it to accelerate 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. Remember, it'd be just under 2 seconds, because it's going equivalent to 65 mile an hour. I just gave it it's not to its top speed, so slightly under. So that's impressive. If you were 24 times smaller, and that scaled down, well, that remote control car was there, and from rest it would get to the equivalent 65 mile an hour in a very impressive 2 seconds. Because of the torque to weight ratio. It's light, there's more power torque for the motor for its overall weight. The real life Range Rover will weigh about, I don't know, 2.5 tons. But the torque will be there, but not to the same ratio. It will not accelerate as quick, but it's got more power. Torque times speed is the power. Because it has more power, it will accelerate up to a faster speed. I don't know the top speed of a Range Rover. 120, 130 maybe, I don't know. But the top speed of that, the power to weight ratio is lower on the remote control car, because it doesn't go as quick, but it will accelerate quicker because of the torque. Torque, by the way, is turning force. That's turning force. That's how the motor turns, but it's torque at the wheels. That's foot-pounds. You can measure it in foot-pounds. So if you're on a pedal on a push bike and the pedal's a foot long, then the weight, the pounds going down on it will be foot-pounds. So I don't know, 250 pounds, say 260 pounds of weight of person standing on it. So if you can imagine someone standing on a pedal on a bike, the crank, or imagine it's a wheel, right? You've got a wheel and you've got a foot long pedal on the circumference of the wheel, and there's a weight, say 15 stone person or 20 stone, 280 pounds, right? That'd be 280 pounds foot torque. So if a 20 stone or a 280 pound person stood on a wheel that had a lever 1 foot long from it, his weight going down, his or her weight's going down on that at 1 foot away from the circumference of the wheel would be regarded as foot-pounds of torque. So it'll be 280. Sorry, that's the floodlight there. But yeah, that'll be foot-pound. That'll be 280 foot-pounds, because it's 280 pounds over 1 foot of turning force on that wheel. So that's foot-pounds. The remote control car has a higher proportion of torque. Obviously, it hasn't got the same torque as a real-life car. Nothing like it. The weight of the remote control car is many, many times less than just 24 times the weight. It's not 24 times less. In other words, the Range Rover, you won't divide that by 24 to get the weight of the remote control car. It's many, many times lighter. So the torque of that motor, the equivalent, is much higher in proportion to the weight of the remote control Range Rover. So yeah, the power to weight will be less because it doesn't accelerate so fast, but the torque to weight, the torque ratio to the weight of the Range Rover, the remote control Range Rover, will be higher, so it accelerates quicker. That's what acceleration is. It's torque. That's when you feel yourself in the real life car, the pressing into the back of the seat. That's actual torque, the turning force from the engine, foot-pounds of torque. The speed at which it will continue on to accelerate up to 100 odd miles per hour will be determined by the power. So you've got torque and you've got power. Anyway, that's best way to explain it. But it was just an experimental video. Yeah, there you go. I just thought I'd make that for you. Just something to think about. I like scaling things down and using the equivalents. It's like that with my Lego models I build out. I have a weight scale ratio. My Lego models are 1 in 30. And the weight ratio that I use in my models is 117 grams equals 1 metric ton, which is 1,000 kilograms. So I have the weight sensation the same. So the double-decker bus that I built with Lego that's scaled will weigh about 10 times the weight of the scaled car that I built in that same the 1 in 30 scaled weight car. Scaled downsized car, but will weigh 10 times less than that Lego bus. So the weight sensations are the equivalent of the real life ones, because the real life bus will be about 10 times heavier than a car. So that's the ratio, the weight ratio, the weight synchronized ratio that I use in Lego models. I like doing that, and I just thought I'd do one for the speed ratio for the remote control. Well, that's a very, very rough description, very rough idea. I've not got a laser, not accessing anything like that for this. It's just a toy, basically. As I say, the battery level has got a lot to do with it as well. Anyway, I hope you found the video interesting. It's just something I thought I would do. I was getting in the way, so I'm not going to get into all this. I thought I'll just play with the remote control car and I'll make a video about it. It's something I like to think about, so I hope you found it interesting. Thanks for watching. Okay, bye for now.